So now I do want to introduce Anthony Julius. Anthony is a warm and hard-working friend of the London Centre. Anthony is a scholar of literature and in particular has written really important books on anti-Semitism in the English canon. He has written a huge book about anti-Semitism in England, and Anthony, as everybody knows, has been centrally important in not one but two trials. One was his defense of Deborah Lipstadt against the aggressive and disgraceful and disgusting Holocaust denial of David Irving. And the other was the Ronnie Fraser case, which took our arguments within AUT and NAPFI and the UCU that we had made over 10 years about anti-Semitism, which took the witnesses who participated in those discussions and who were victims of that anti-Semitism, and it was our last hope, really, to get a hearing for those ideas, and we went to court, and Anthony was brilliant, and he was not calculating or strategic. He said to the witnesses, you tell your story, and the judges will be smart enough to listen to the actual story and not some oversimplified concoction that we have created in order to win the case in a kind of instrumental way. And it turned out that the judges were not, could not be trusted to do that properly. I want to introduce Anthony. Anthony will be funny and brilliant, but this is a fundraising speech. But I also want to say that Anthony, I think, has very serious things to say about contemporary anti-Semitism, especially this week, and about the need to take on that fight at the very highest scholarly level. Anthony.
It's a somewhat demoralizing way to be introduced, to be reminded of one of one's failures. Maybe I should be getting used to it. But anyway, before I speak, I'm hoping that somewhere we will see a QR code. Yes. If you train your phones, I think, at the code, as I'm speaking, you will be able to donate. And we don't have a corner of the screen which will show the numbers going up, so I can't interpret the figures as being a tacit request for me to stop speaking or encouraging me to carry on speaking. But in any event, the whole reason for me being here is just to encourage you to pay no attention to me and instead focus on what's behind me. I want to say three things. First of all, I want to just talk a little bit about what it is in these current times to make an appeal. And secondly, I want to just identify what the reasons are that are not compelling to make a donation to the London Centre. And then I want to explain why those reasons are significantly outweighed by reasons why one should empty one's purse. I was just thinking about what I was going to say this evening, and my mind went back to an appeal that I didn't give, but that I was a witness to so many years ago in 1967. It was the first day of the Six-Day War, at a time when we felt, those few people here who remember it, we felt, I was 10 and, as we used to say when we were 10 and 11 months old, and I went with my father to our local shul. And there was such a heavy sense of dread and fear and a kind of not paralyzing, but a kind of frantic anxiety about what was happening. And we didn't know, and there was no social media, and there was no such thing as a news cycle, and essentially we relied upon television and then newspapers. Absurd, really. We waited hours for news, which was already out of date when it was printed or broadcast. And I went on the first night, and I heard the late Rossa Chin, father of Trevor Chin, Sir Trevor Chin, speak. And he stood up, and the shul was absolutely packed with very tight-faced, anxious people. And he said, I want you to know that I have arranged for the doors to be locked. You may want to know why. Pause. It's because I'm not letting anyone out until we've raised £10,000. So I thought, maybe I should try the same thing. And it would be wonderful if we raised £10,000 tonight. Just wonderful. No more than the London Centre deserves. But of course, now, if we talk about locking the doors, it's not because we're pulling some stunt to encourage people to focus on the maximum they can afford to give. It's because we're worried about what's on the other side of the doors. And we're worried about what's on the other side in a way which is radically new. It was not a worry that anyone had in 1967. Israel itself was facing, as we feared, a kind of threat to its existence which was so profound that it left us voiceless with fear. But there was no sense at all that on our own streets, in our own neighborhoods, there was anything other, at worse, than a kind of nothing to do with us indifference. The idea that there were, so to speak, multiple fronts against the Jewish people being opened up, this is not something that occurred to us. And of course, I say this in order to strike a very stark, I think, contrast with how we are now. The interconnectedness of Jewish life has never felt quite so vital, so bright in its presence as now. That there has never been quite that same sense that everywhere in the Jewish world is a single continuous front line. And it's in respect of how that front line is understood that the London Centre plays its significant, its consequential part. What it doesn't do, and anyone who thinks that this is what it should do, keep your hands in your pockets, it does not set out to persuade anti-Semites that they're wrong. It's given up. I'm not sure, actually, that even David, with his extraordinarily optimistic view of human nature, I'm not even sure that even David ever thought, David Hirsch, the marvelous, extraordinary David Hirsch, without whom the London Centre would not exist. And I don't know whether anyone has said anything about David, because he's so generous in the way he speaks about other people and so grateful for the support that he's able to get for his own endeavors, that I think sometimes we just take himself for granted. So please, let's not take David Hirsch for granted. If you were looking for the best reason to support the London Centre, it is in the person of David Hirsch, who has... He is such an extraordinarily indefatigable, rational champion of our people. I first met him years ago, and he has never fallen below the standard that he set in those early Engage days. Engage, as an earlier avatar of the London Centre was called, had two focuses. First, it was an argument against the boycott and in favour of engagement. The basic position was we should not turn our backs on each other, we should engage with each other, we should reason together. Enemies of Israel, friends of Israel, Zionists, anti-Zionists, partisans at one side and the other, it should be possible to find common cause. That the shift from Engage, the very name Engage, to the London Centre for the Study of Contemporary Anti-Semitism is itself an indication of what degenerate new times we're now living in. I read the admirable Hadley Freeman, a friend of, I think I dare to say, a friend of the London Centre and a participant in this struggle in which we're all engaged. I read her in the Sunday Times this morning, where she was talking about that ludicrous self-regarding letter from artists and others that appeared in one of the papers last week. And she said a number of the people that among the signatories were people that she knew. And then she said something like, I was going to call them, to challenge them, but actually I didn't have the stomach for it. And it's not, she didn't mean, and no one should think, that she didn't have the stomach for it because she lacked the spirit. It's just that she understood, as I think we now all understand in the clarity of these horrific times, that there is no scope for reasoning with lethal anti-Semitic hatred. And that is not the point of the London Centre. What is the point of the London Centre? First of all, it is to give the resources to Jewish students and Jewish academics to understand the situation in which they find themselves on campus. Second, it's to call out the phony arguments and redefinitions of anti-Semitism that are means by which anti-Semites can rob Jews of the language in which to describe our own suffering. David has been brilliant in this respect. The work that he's written and the work that he's encouraged others to write has been penetratingly effective in exposing phony definitions of anti-Semitism used by anti-Semites to give dignity to their hatred of Jews. And the London Centre is now the institutional expression of that undertaking. Last, the London Centre is enhancing and deepening Jewish institutional memory of the continuity of anti-Semitism, explaining that what is happening now is merely another iteration, with its own distinct properties, of course, of earlier instances and versions of anti-Semitism. And it's so important that we should have that kind of insight into what we're facing. Because if we don't know it, we can't address it. We can't defend ourselves against it. The London Centre makes us and renews our literacy. It makes us literate. It renews our literacy on the subject of anti-Semitism. And, well, if I haven't already said enough to encourage you to donate, then let me just say this. Please donate. I will move from reasons to just a contentless plea. It's so important. We take for granted the commitment, but we don't understand the cost that commitment demands. And I don't wish to speak melodramatically. I had contact with Pete Newborn. I didn't know, I don't think anybody knew quite how desperate his situation was when we spoke. The anti-Semitism, the hatred directed at Jews for the gratification of the haters exacts a very heavy toll. And there is a cost associated with responding to that hatred. And the easiest bit of the cost is the bit that just has a pound sign in front of it. That there's nothing that I think we could have done to stop the violence and the self-violence caused by Jewish hatred of Jews. But we can certainly make a financial contribution to the people who are themselves engaged in the defense of Jews. And that is what the London Centre is. It is a centre which operates at the highest academic standards, but it is a centre that exists to defend Jews, to defend all of us here. And if we do anything this evening to advance that goal, it is to donate to the people who are manning that defense. So please, I'm going to pause and just glance at phones in the audience, because I'm shameless when it comes to fundraising. I was brought up by someone who fundraised for Israel, and I know that one can't pussyfoot around these things. Please, all of you, it's unmistakably large, this QR code.
You were joking about the Fraser case, I think, but
No,
he wasn't joking. I want to say something very serious about that. It didn't occur to me that I know, of course, it hurt us all, losing the Fraser case. Didn't occur to me that it was something that was bad to say, because the truth is that the Fraser case was amongst your best work and your most important work and you gave us a voice, and you put our argument in its very strongest way, not in the way that was calculated, but its real strongest way. You gave us a voice, and what we learnt was even still, people who are not idiots in the SWP and in UCU could listen to 3 weeks of that, could listen to the General Secretary saying that if somebody quoted the protocols as a way of understanding the Jews... Mein Kampf. Excuse me, the protocols is tame. If somebody said that to understand the Jews you should read Mein Kampf, would that be anti-Semitic? And she said, not in my union it wouldn't. Because my union is an anti-racist space, so if it was said here, it couldn't be, right? That was the case. So, joking aside, that was our work, and we learned something from losing that, which is that we were in trouble. And honestly, I wanted this theatre to be full, and it's not full, and this worries me too, because last night, Matthias Kunzel gave an amazing, brilliant lecture, and his room was not full. I think this is a brilliant day, and it is not full. And there are other kinds of things that could have been done today, and it would have been full. So this worries me. And just one thing about money is, I think nearly everyone here has given, right? You've given, fine. Do what he says, give some more, but what we need to do is...
Don't undo my
word. What we need to do is to get other people to give. So go to your whatever, your granny, your mum, your auntie. Talk about students who are on campus, who need protecting, who need ideological, intellectual protection. And let's broaden the base of people who are giving, not just ask the same people for more and more again. Let me tell you something amazing. And I don't quite believe it myself because I haven't seen it with my own eyes. Somebody emailed me earlier on and said, what can I do to help? And I emailed back to her and said, well, it would be wonderful if you came and showed your face and you could pop on stage after Anthony. And then nobody answered the email, and I thought, fine. I'm told that Maureen Littman is here, and I hope she's going to come on the stage. Maureen. So people could see the...
I just came to hear Howard Jacobson. I've come from the rally, which was, I must say, fantastic. I was not expecting to be on stage talking to you at all. But I have to tell you that it was a rally just about the hostages. So there were no political dimensions, but Michael Gove spoke passionately about Israel's right to exist and how it would be defended. And I managed to grab hold of him and ask him what he was doing while the Hamas flags were walking down Oxford Street. And he says they're going to do something about it, which wouldn't, I don't know what that means. Hopefully it means a slight change in the law. Other than that, I don't know what I have to say, except we're in a time that we couldn't even imagine, all of us baby boomers who grew up in the safety of being, we'd given, hadn't we, after the war? We'd given, and so we've been very safe for a long time. But of course, we can't sit on that safety laurel at all, ever, and this has proved it. And for me, I suppose it just came to me when last week I was asked if I would like some security on walking into Coronation Street each day to rehearse. That came as the biggest shock since the letter I received when I was playing Joyce Grenfell, which said, "You can't play Joyce Grenfell. She was English." She was American, actually, 3/4, but no. And the truth has never had much to do with bigotry, has it? So, we're all affected by this. And David Baddiel, I think, has made things such an interesting success, his book, Jews Don't Count, which obviously I've read and enjoyed. But I think it works pretty much in the same way as The Pianist worked as a film, in that there was a good German in it, which made it sort of palatable somehow. And with David, he does talk about how he's not remotely interested in Israel, and he is an atheist. And that's kind of made the idea of Jews not counting float. And all this, sometimes I just wonder, I worry about the idea, the Jews again, they're complaining again, they're whining again, and it's difficult to separate the fact that we have something to whine about from the fact that we are the people of the wine. Yes, I've caught up in that often, because it's me who says Helen Mirren should only play Golda if they've gone through all the Jewish actors first. And then, of course, it seems like I'm saying I should play Golda Meir, which, of course, is ridiculous, because she was a teddy bear and I'm a giraffe, and it wouldn't have worked. And Helen Mirren is sexy and I'm not. And although you'd be surprised, had my moments. That's it, really. I could go on, but I didn't expect to be here. So I won't. But it was very moving today. All the Israeli families who have lost people spoke about the experience itself, and it is unbelievably painful and unbearable to hear them and to see their bravery. And there was a minute of silence, and there was a lot of bring them home, because that's what it's about now, bringing them home. And I was interviewed by, I think, Good Morning Britain, and I shot my mouth off, as I always do, and asked why Mr. Loach wasn't too concerned about the Uyghurs. And why that well-known socialist Miriam Margolyes happened to have 8 houses all over the world and cared so much about the Palestinians, but not necessarily about anyway, the ones. I won't. Look, enjoy yourselves. I'm glad you came, and I don't know whether I'm glad I came or not, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maureen. Wow.